Internet, you are now listening to the FreeLunch podcast. This is your man, Premium Pete. Yeah, I'm calling from Brooklyn, and I'm letting you know that you're tuned right in. Don't go nowhere. The place to be is right here. Listen to the FreeLunch podcast. Cheers.
Yeah. Set the world on fire, take the block by storm, but I blow so cold. Nigga, warm your hands in the hell where the fire burn blue when the wheels turn slow when the steel pierce your skin, but it ain't so soft. I was raised in the Ville, I'm prepared for a war, and my shield so thorough that I don't need a hammer, and the heat don't scare me, man. This Alabama in the summer like a hammer to a runner, you gon' feel me. Go ahead, call me Green Tea Billy. Free Willy in your mind at the same damn time. You don't even wanna reach for the ceiling high. Listen, man, I'm the truth, won't lie. That's why I tell you, put your hand to the sky. We can live for the moment, screaming out omens like the roof on fire. Finna set the world 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 on fire.
Welcome to FreeLunch Podcast, a member of the New South Movement Podcast Network. This is your boy Tight. BG, how you feeling?
The 2-7 kid is in the building, man. I feel good, man. It's April. It's springtime. Sundress season is in effect, so I'm good.
I'm gonna tell you why I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm listening to the Retroscope podcast, and you dropping sundress season on the podcast.
This is a real thing that I have going on.
See, I was gonna go a whole different direction with my intro, and now you got me talking about sundress season.
You can always bring it back, man. Bring it back to where you want to go. I just had to throw that in there. Let people know it real.
So you know, I relocated to Georgia. So as part of relocating, you got to get the new tags. So I got the personalized tag that's gonna represent Tight, and it's gonna represent the New South Movement Network. So I can't wait for that. I can't wait to receive that in the next 3-4 weeks.
Being a newcomer, you didn't just go with the standard issue. You done went and added some flavor to it.
Had to. I got to represent. I had to put my name on that Tight. Had to put something with New South Movement Network on there. I can't wait. But you know what they do in the state of Georgia? You know what they do before you get your personalized tag, man?
What you have to do?
And they give you a white sheet of paper that you put on the back of your tag. Now, keep in mind, we just had a tornado come through there with all the thunderstorms that done came last week. I just got the paper tag. And now I'm riding around with a rolled up tag, with a rolled up wet tag.
Because it got wet.
It got wet. That's what my tag like right now.
You got to get a cover for that thing, or either go run a couple of copies off.
Ain't gonna do it. We're gonna ride like this. So anyway, yeah, man. I think we got another good one, man. We got one especially with what's happening in the school systems and with the new presidency, sir. What you think?
You know, we're talking about it with the recent placement of the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. Much controversy surrounding that. She's an advocate for school choice, and we don't know what school choice will mean to the hood. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's a big question because we know that the community and our future generations go as far as their education and how well equipped they are to function on the day-to-day. So, we got a show in store for the FreeLunch Podcast family today that's going to share some insight on what's going on in the schools today and how, I guess, as a community, we can better prepare ourselves to, you know, be supplemental and helping, you know, kids in our community get to where they need to get to and get what they need from education, whether it be traditional or non-traditional means. So I hope we're going to fill in that gap today.
Also, I think it's important is because it's our generation, it's our peers, it's our colleagues that are really at a time and and we're at that point where we can make moves, we're making decisions, we are leading the way. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm reflecting coming out of college, and you dream about these moments, and now we have a story and a real life story that is a colleague, that's a peer, someone that you know well that is putting things in action. And so to have another story like that around education and around the school system and that kind of conversation is refreshing, but it's also needed.
To just have this platform to where we can call on people that we have confidence in and people that we have identified as like movers and shakers that are actually not just talking about it, but actually putting some action behind those words. And like you said, man, our guest today is someone that I can just flat out say I grew up with. Coming out of Selma, Alabama, man. There's a picture, and I'll probably post this on Instagram as we come up. But we kind of started at one of the schools in Selma that had historically been an all-white school. And at that time we were there, it was just probably about 2, 3, 4 black students in the whole, this little Head Start program. And from that point on, man, we just kind of followed each other all the way through high school. And then when he gets into his story, his mom was also influential in numerous people that came through that Selma city public school system. And, to have this opportunity, he's definitely a supporter of the podcast, but someone who has taken what we was kind of instilled with in Selma and taking it across the country and doing big things. It really does my heart good to have this opportunity. He's an HBCU product, Alabama A&M University. Had left there, went on to teach in the Baltimore public school system, 10 years of that work. And that's crazy in itself, man. You just think about 10 years. Like, we've been in our trades for 10 years. And so that just kind of leans on what you're talking about. It's our time to take this leadership role. But, being in the classroom and having an impact on the youth in that community for that many years. But now he's embarking upon another endeavor. He's taking it to the next level, and we're going to get into some of this stuff. So I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to get to this show. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my brother to the show, Obasi Okeke. What's up, bro?
Oh, man. Did you introduce me like that? I feel like somebody, man.
Man, you are somebody. Man. You are somebody.
I really feel like somebody special, man. That was beautiful, man. I really appreciate it. It is a true honor to be on this podcast. It's a true honor.
It's an honor to have you. What you got going on up there on the East Coast?
We're trying to change the world, man. We're trying to change the world. We were born in Selma. Like, when you said you're going to put that picture up, I started to get a little nervous because I remember I was the only one wearing a suit on picture day that day.
I know you had on the bow tie. Did you have on the vest?
I did. Yes, no vest, but I had the bow tie on. I had to wear it all day. So I remember that. I remember that picture well. But we grew up in Selma. There's something special about Selma, and you don't leave it. And once you've seen it, and once you get out there into the world, I think we're doing what we're supposed to do. Take what we learned, and we're supposed to make it synthesize and make it change, help change the world, man. So that's what I'm really trying to do right now.
BG, you brought up Baltimore, and I lived in the D.C. area and the DMV for the past 7 years before relocating to Georgia, and I'm very familiar with the school systems, not only in D.C. But also in Baltimore, the Baltimore public school system. I'm interested, and I'm sure we'll get into more in depth as to why you transitioned, or why you decided to start your own thing. But I'm interested in the weekend the students decided to protest. Because I believe it was it may have been because of Freddie Gray, and then we're all familiar with the mother that went and found her son and whooped his butt because he was out there rioting. But on that particular day, where were you and what were you doing?
A little backstory: the school that it allegedly started at was Frederick High School. That was my first school. I taught there 5 years, where I started my career, where I cut my teeth. The whole story is not really out. Frederick Douglass High School is located across the street from Mondawmin Mall, which is a mall in a black area of the city, West Baltimore, heart of West Baltimore, that has no anchor store, meaning like a J.C. Penney's or a Belk or Macy's, but it's the highest grossing mall in the state of Maryland. All right, so just think about that for a second. One of the poorest areas in the city of Baltimore, but has the highest grossing mall. Right next to that mall is the hub for buses and subways. All the kids take the natural transit, the city transit. They don't have yellow buses. That doesn't exist. They ride buses with ordinary people every day. The day of the riots, those buses were shut down. And to this day, we still do not know who gave the order to shut those buses down. At that point, I was teaching at Lakeland Elementary Middle School, which is on the southern end of Baltimore City. And I had students who still go through that hub to get home. They shut the buses down at between 1 and 3 o'clock. I had students call me, middle school students now, who said they cannot get home. The kids were essentially trapped in that neighborhood. It wasn't just the kids that were from Douglas High School. The kids from all over the city used that hub to get home, to get to their houses. There's no other way. You have to go through that hub. So we're talking about thousands of kids who were simply trapped in what was going on in the city at was easily the most volatile time that I've ever experienced in my life. The response by the police, I think you've seen some of the pictures of it. We're under consent decree now, luckily, that is going to bring about change between the way police deal with the community that led them to not really be trained for that situation. Kids who were emotional, who essentially saw Freddie Gray, who everybody called Pepper in the neighborhood, who was from West Baltimore. Essentially, they watched him be killed by police. They saw that, and he was well liked. There was a rumor going around that the kids at Frederick Douglass were going to have a purge of the white citizens of Baltimore. That turned out to be a hoax. Everyone was on edge. The police were already stationed at the mall. When they shut down the buses, those children had nowhere to go. It was a powder keg. It almost seemed, well, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it seemed orchestrated to me because I didn't want to drive down to anywhere that was dangerous. West Baltimore was my home 5 years, literally. But when I saw how angry everybody was, there are rules about Baltimore. Like it's a fine city. We're going through a lot of turmoil right now with 300 plus murders a year the last 2 years, which puts me on edge. I've never really been on edge before, but I didn't want to go down to that area when that was going on. But I had kids who were calling me saying, "Mr. Okeke, how am I going to get home?" And so I had to. And I'm looking around. They're babies. Now again, I'm a teacher, even though I don't teach in the city anymore. I'm not a classroom teacher right now. I'm always going to be a teacher at heart. And I'm looking at babies who don't know how to get home and are trapped with riot police. So, in that moment, I kind of saw how people really view children who look like me. And it was a heartbreaking thing to see. But Martin Luther King said it best. A riot is the voice of the voiceless. And had that not happened, I don't think the attention that was paid to what was really happening in Baltimore would have been national news.
That was a lot of our first look into some of that underbelly in that particular area. So being that you were part of that community, how would you describe it?
Baltimore is literally the last affordable city on the East Coast. There's nowhere else that you can look at water from a house. There's nowhere else that you can see you can still buy a row home. New York, you got to be a millionaire to buy in New York. D.C., you got to be a millionaire to buy in D.C. Philadelphia is such a big city, but Baltimore is one of the most segregated cities in the country. So there are these huge pockets of poverty, and then there are these huge pockets of wealth. And they're all concentrated around being able to look at water, being able to have access to shops and businesses and grocery stores and things that growing up in Selma were always 5 minutes away. When you look at it now, I still see those pockets. I still see those pockets of wealth that are growing around basically the inner harbor, around the harbor, around the water, and you see true poverty in most other places. But it is such a charming city. It's called the Charm City for a reason. It's the midway point between being truly in the north and being in the south. It's the last big southern city, but because we have we're on the 95 corridor, we're 3 hours away from New York, we're 2 hours away from Philadelphia, we're 45 minutes, depending on traffic, away from D.C., and you can still drive to Atlanta if you really have to. There's no place like it. It's no place like it. It's the only other place I felt at home besides Selma, Alabama. Only other place. I think it's on the precipice of becoming something very, very special. But we have to deal with systemic racism. We have to deal with institutions that are set up to create a permanent underclass of people that refuse to be a permanent underclass of people. Like, the people of Baltimore are as friendly as the people in the South, as motivated as the people from New York City. They have a different type of the grind and the mentality and the hustle is true of Baltimore. I think that's one of the things I saw the most stepping in the classroom, because you see it in the children immediately. Like they have that hustle. That hustle is instilled in them, and they have the supreme self-confidence. Like no matter what, they have supreme self-confidence, and that's you. I mean, you can't teach that. That's intrinsic. So I really believe that we are on the precipice of something great happening. But I mean, I'm waiting to hit the bottom, because last year I thought it was the bottom. 300 murders in a city of only 600,000 people, and when that happens once, that's scary. When it happens 2 times in a row, it gets terrifying. And then to have a family that lives here, it makes me worried. I've never been worried before, so I'm a little worried.
I'm very familiar with the murder rate in Baltimore, living in the DMV. But it was led by, and this is why I get confused, because Stephanie Rollins Blake and now Catherine Pugh were the latest, the previous mayor and the current mayor. And so help our audience and myself understand the disconnect between the youth and the leadership in Baltimore.
I feel like a lot of the youth feel like they are abandoned. Mayor Rollins Blake, was a product of Baltimore City. She went to Western High School, which is one of the higher-rated high schools, all-girls high school that puts out incredible alumni. And Mayor Pugh, the current mayor, is also a product of Baltimore City. Children who don't have anything are not worried about who the mayor is. I think there's a new Cameron song out, and I shouldn't like it as much as I do, but he kind of says, people get shot every day, you'll be all right. And then there's a verse where a guy says, if you think I'm worried about my guy who just got shot yesterday, do you think I care who the president is? That's on a micro level. We deal with that in Baltimore. Why would you care about who's leading, who's in charge in City Hall, when you have to worry about walking home from school? And you have to worry about your mother being on drugs, your grandmother being on drugs. You have to worry about who's going to come into your house. You have to worry about where you're going to live. You have to worry about all the things that extreme poverty brings to your doorstep. Why would you care about it? And then you have to, they have to juxtapose that with the idea that Baltimore is still the last affordable city on the East Coast, which means that industry does want to build here. Like, they do want to come to Baltimore. It has the negative reputation. I enjoyed The Wire. I won't lie about it, but also, and I do believe The Wire is pretty authentic, especially after being here for as long as I've been here. I do know, and I learned a lot of rules about Baltimore based on watching what was a fictionalized show that had a real life utility for me. So we're dealing with 2 types of things: the people with wealth and the people without wealth. And the people with wealth who want to generate more wealth are doing that in this city at a remarkable rate. I look around and I see cranes everywhere. And that's the first sign of progress that you see. But I only see them in concentrated areas, which have populations which are African American. And then I go to the West Side, and you see nothing. Now, development has changed, has sped up a little bit, but I remember my first day walking into Frederick High School thinking, like, where can I go and get something to eat? And there were no restaurants around, even though there's a mall across the street from me. There was no grocery store around. They built one now, and they built a Target now. But they've also started moving people outside of the city, because that, I think we're moving more towards the European model of people with wealth moving into the city because they're tired of driving. Nobody wants to spend their life in the car anymore, so people are moving back into the city if you have wealth, and people are moving out of the city if you don't have wealth, primarily based on whether or not you have a family or not. Because if you have a family, you don't want to send your kids to Baltimore City School. And it all goes back to school, all goes back to education, all goes back to access, and all goes back to wealth. And, that's kind of why I started what I started, because we're at a critical mass.
And you said something interesting, and I think this is kind of going to set the stage for the rest of the conversation, is you don't want your kid to go to Baltimore city. Why is that?
No. In the last, let's see, I taught 10 years. 10 years in the classroom. We had 5 superintendents. They call them CEOs here. 5 superintendents. There's been a 93% turnover rate in terms of the principals in each school. Based on my graduate studies at Loyola, it states that a superintendent needs at least 12 years to change the trajectory of a school system. Now, we had 5 in 10. All right. It takes a principal 7 years to change the culture of a school. We have one of the most transient populations in terms of students. They bounce from school to school to school. The stability that you need to make any substantive change is not here. On top of the fact, I left this part out, which is which scared me the most. The average teaching career of a teacher who comes into Baltimore City, I'm not talking about like teaching at one school. I'm talking about teaching, period, is 4 years. Their entire career in teaching lasts 4 years. I can say this with no ego. I'm a special teacher. But I wasn't any good until at least my 3rd year. So by the time you're getting to the point where you're any good, we're losing all those teachers and starting over fresh. And it is one of the biggest disservices that you can ever do to a child. I mean, I knew my teachers. I knew I was going to have in 8th grade for 8th grade science when I was in 2nd grade because they taught my sister. I knew I was going to have in high school, I was going to have Mr. Rhodes for chemistry and physics when I got to 12th grade and 11th grade. I knew that in 3rd grade. That has disappeared. That doesn't even exist anymore. That doesn't exist. So we're looking at kids who need the stability of school, who need it, never having it from the top down. And that's a lot of things go into that, but I think that's one of the biggest failures of the school system. Right now they're facing a huge deficit where at first they I think a couple of months ago where they were talking about laying off about 1,000 teachers. I had already decided to leave by that point. I was gone before that happened because I saw the writing on the wall. It's always the threat of teacher layoffs. Even though we just built these new casinos, which were supposed to solve all of our funding issues, but that's another story. They were talking about 1,000 teacher layoffs as little as a month ago. They came out this week, and said that it'll be much less than that, but they still don't know haven't given exact numbers, or even settled with the union how those layoffs go, even though there's a teacher contract. You can't build a school.
How are they laying off teachers at a time where you need teachers? The students are not going anywhere, are they? Like, how?
Funding. You saw what happened in Chicago with when Chance the Rapper went to go talk to their governor, and they're defunding the school system. They're finding ways to take the money and spend it in other areas.
Is that real?
So we are losing some students. I can't deny that we are losing students. I told you, like, when we lost population in Baltimore, losing the black population in Baltimore.
Right.
However, the way the formula for student funding and the way to track students, when I told you this is a transient population now. I had kids I always read CUNY folders. I was a nerd for this. I remember the teachers used to tell me, I learned from when I came in, I had teachers who had taught 30, 20 years, 35 years. They said, if you don't go read those CUNY records, you haven't done your job. So I would sit down every year and look at the CUNY records, and it shows every school the child had been to. I remember a kid, beautiful child, inside and out, had been to 7 different schools in 5 years. There's no way to track where that student is. There's no way to truly track how many kids are in the system. It's just like trying to track homeless people in a major metropolitan area. You're not going to get a true calculation of it. So they defund us. And then when Baltimore City gets the wealth that I'm talking about, we get a new hotel, we get a new business that comes into new multinational business that comes into the city, and that shows the property values have gone up. So they decrease the amount of money that the state gives to the city to fund the schools, and it's not a true representation because I'm talking about true pockets of wealth and true pockets of poverty. I mean, you have a Ritz-Carlton sitting on one block, and then you go 5 minutes north, and you're like, oh my goodness, is this a war zone? Because you see boarded up house, boarded up house, boarded up house. And you see one family living here. And then you see a whole nother street of boarded up homes. It's unreal. It's unreal.
So in the bio, your mom's in education. You attended Alabama A&M. When did you decide you wanted to get into education, and how did you end up in Baltimore?
So man, I went to A&M, Alabama A&M University. I love my alma mater. For the first year, I did well, but I floundered. I had no real purpose. I went there on a math scholarship, my minor statistics. And I only went on the scholarship because I wanted to prove to my parents I could pay for my own education. My dad's Nigerian, and my mother was African American, but she was from Flint, Michigan, and she did everything on her own. And so I wanted to prove that I could do that myself. But I realized that I was missing something after my first year. I never learned how to study. I never learned how to focus. I didn't realize how much my parents really meant to me in terms of giving me the structure that I needed and the outlets that I needed to be successful. So when I got to college, I had a ball, but I didn't know how to manage time. I didn't know how to manage classes. I didn't know how to manage anything. Then my mother got sick. My mother had stage 4 breast cancer. We found out the last second, even though she had all her mammograms, and I was devastated. And at that moment, she said to me, "All right, Obasi, you can't fall apart. It's time. I know you're upset, and I know you like nobody else knows you. Go start volunteering." I started volunteering at the Richard Showers Recreational Center in Huntsville, Alabama, as an after-school counselor for 4th graders. The day after she told me to go volunteer. I mean, that was my first real time, like going in with a resume and talking. I was just going to volunteer. The city of Huntsville ended up hiring me. I worked there for 2 years as after-school counselor, and I knew it was my calling. I knew I had to work with children. There's nothing like it. You know, I tell people now who even think about education, there are a lot of reasons not to do it, but the one reason to do it is that kids give you something that no one else can give you in this world. I'm rich because of children, not monetarily, but I'm rich because of what they've given me, what they taught me. After about a year of doing that, you know, my mother passed. I changed my major to English, language arts, secondary education, which made me pretty much have to start over again, which I didn't mind because I still needed that time to mature as a man and as a student. Because, like I said, I didn't really know how to do any of the studying. I was blessed that I got in so much trouble growing up that my parents used to punish me all the time by making me read the 100 greatest novels. Like, so I'd already read everything anybody could ever, you know, nobody could ever ask me about a book that I hadn't read. I had to read them.
That really happened.
I mean, I didn't get to watch TV during the week was out of question. All the TV shows we got to watch were Cosby Show and Different World. So after that, you know, I was okay in college. I was kind of just floating. So I went ahead. I finished A&M, and then I had a moment of self-doubt. And the moment of self-doubt came from the fact that I didn't know if I could be in a classroom and follow my mother's footsteps. Like, you know, I think there are levels of teaching. You know, you have teachers, you have special teachers, then you have master teachers. And she was a master teacher. Master teacher can teach you anything. A special teacher is special. They connect with kids, and they can give you the subject matter. But the difference between a master teacher and a special teacher is that continued education. Because a master teacher is always still special, but they never stop that learning process. And I was right there, and I understood it. So I was really scared. So I left. Instead of going into teaching, I went to Ohio, and I went to law school for a year at Ohio Northern University. And I realized at that point, it wasn't just going to be that you read everything in the world. You really had to have a structure for studying. You really had to have the discipline to sit down and study. You had to know how you learned, and you had to maximize how you learned. I stayed there for a year. I came back my second year, and I said, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I said, my heart's not in it. I said, I want to be a teacher. I got married that summer. My wife was in law school here in Maryland, at University of Maryland, and that's right here in Baltimore. And I said, you know, my degree is in education, in English secondary education, and that's a big city. So I go get a job. So I packed up, I came to Baltimore in September. I remember another one of our friends told me, send your cover letter, send your resume to wherever you want to work. I sent it to every high school and middle high school in Baltimore City. One principal called me back and said, you need to go to the central office to apply. I went to the central office, and they set me up with 5 interviews. This is October. So what that means, though, is either 5 people had quit or five English positions had not been filled over the summertime. So that meant some kids started school year without an English teacher, which is almost unheard of where I'm from. Like growing up, I had never heard of that. I'd heard of teachers being pregnant, being out on pregnancy leave, paternity leave, and that, of course, that happens. It's natural, and that's a good thing. But I had never seen that type of thing. I literally picked Frederick Douglass High School, which is the oldest all African American high school in the nation, because it was the closest one to my house, to where I was living. It was the shortest commute. I had no idea about the school, nothing about the history. I walked through the school the first day, and I was shocked. Even on my interview. My interview only lasted 15 minutes, so I thought I did a bad job. And I was trying to think of questions to keep asking because I was like, wow, did I bomb an interview like that? I thought I was doing really well. But then she asked me at the end of the 15 minutes, like, when can you start? And it was Wednesday, so I said I can start on Monday because I want to get that last little bit of weekend. But so that's kind of how I got here. And I am so grateful that I started there because there were so many things that were wrong with the school, but so many things that were right with the children, and a lot of the teachers and a lot of the people, even a lot of the administrators involved in the school, and the community and the alumni at that point, that I feel like if I can teach there, I can teach anywhere. You give me a book in a day and I can teach it to you. But even with that being said, I kept going to school just because I felt like I needed to know more. They were so diverse in their learning styles, their abilities, that I felt like I needed to know everything. Before I went to get my master's, I went to Coppin State, which is across the street from Frederick Douglass High School, and I had 30 graduate hours in education courses, and I got obsessed with being able to teach everybody. And you can't ignore anything in high school, especially not that high school. You couldn't ignore anything. No one could be ignored. So, that's kind of how I ended up here, and I spent 5 years there. After those 5 years, I went to a school on the outskirts of the city, elementary middle school, and nobody goes there. And one of the reasons I went there was because I wanted to see what it really looked like to get a kid younger. And nobody goes to middle school. Middle schools, I think you can ask most educators, and they'll probably agree with this. Middle school is so much harder than high school. If you even think about your middle school time, middle school is where your hormones are going. You're musty for the first time. You're like, boys and girls are figuring out how they like each other, and you're right in that mix of being grown and young. So I stayed there 5 years. In my last school, before I finally came out, I said I need to go even younger and see what happens here. And I went to Utah Moshburn, which is a elementary school, which is blocks away from the projects of Freddie Gray, that the whole Freddie Gray incident happened, where he grew up. And I was hoping, and maybe it was naive of me, I was hoping that after everything had happened, there would be an influx of resources and just general care for what children were really having to deal with in the school system, and that the school would be flooded with resources. But when I went back to the West Side, which is what Utah Moshburn was on the West Side, I was stunned all over again, and it was heartbreaking. I won't lie, it was heartbreaking. But in being heartbroken, I said, what I have to do to fix this? What can I do to change this? And that's where 1106 came from. It's like this is my time, and if my head and my heart can't agree on what I'm doing, then I know I have to do something else. And so this is what I decided.
A lot of times when I get into these conversations about kids and their learning abilities, that in their aptitude, most people, especially from the older generations, will put all of the onus on the kids. It's the kids. The kids are not motivated. The kids don't want to learn. They want to spend more time listening to rap music. They would always put it on rap music. But being in the trenches, like, what is your take on the actual kids and their focus and the obstacles that they face on one hand, and then as a teacher, did you feel like your support system, as far as the administration, do you feel like they were equally as engaged in making sure that those students got what they need?
It takes a village to raise a kid, and we don't have villages anymore. How about this? Every year we went to school from first to ninth grade. Did you have PE every day, physical education every day?
Absolutely.
Every day, right? Every day you had PE, where you did something physical.
Every day.
You went outside. Every day. I learned how to play baseball from your dad, Ryan. I was scared, but I was scared because I couldn't see the ball, but I learned from him. The kids that I taught this last school had PE once every other week. Now, that in itself is against best practice in teaching. Every kid needs to let that energy out. But when you compound that with the fact that they live in a city with a murder rate of 300 plus a year, and it's unsafe to go outside and play outside, you have kids whose only time to be sociable, only time where they have a chance to be free is at school. It is set up for failure. Like, I believe in exercise. I believe that children have to be able to go outside. I believe that children have to be able to work out their own problems among themselves. I believe that children have to have that chance to build that executive function. And we never give that to them here. Never. Someone is always standing over top of them. So it's not a matter of do they want to learn or can they learn. No one can learn when they have that amount of energy stored up and just sitting there waiting to explode. I wouldn't have been successful in the Baltimore City schools that I've taught in. None of the three. And I'm not saying that I taught at three terrible schools, because like I said, there were great teachers there were some great teachers, there were some terrible teachers. There were some great administrators and some terrible administrators. There were some people all in between. It's just like any other profession. But I wouldn't have been successful as a person who really found out he had ADHD as an adult in these types of environments. I was in the band. If you're lucky enough to go to a school with a band, maybe you get to play an instrument. Maybe. If you're lucky enough to go to school with art, maybe you're lucky enough to have an art teacher who went to school to be an art teacher. And that doesn't mean that you have to go to school, you have to go traditional route to be a teacher, but it's better who went to school to be an art teacher, and she doesn't have 10 kids in class who are completely uninterested in art who ruined it. You want to be a dancer? If you're at a school that's lucky enough to have a dance teacher, maybe you have a teacher who can control a class because there are seven kids in the back who don't want to be in dance class. We have robbed kids of the arts. We've robbed them of a chance to express their executive function. We've robbed them of a chance to be children. So that when we try to sit down and teach them, because we have to, everything's based on the test. All our funding is based on a test. And Baltimore is one of the first, it's not technically called merit-based pay, but half of your evaluation, which determines how much money you make, is based on how the school does on a standardized test that teachers never get to see, can never talk about with their colleagues. We have to literally sign an affidavit saying we won't talk about it, won't look at it, and can't really examine how they're asking questions or what types of questions they're asking. So I don't put all the blame on children. Now, at the same time, I've been called some names. I've heard some things that, come from kids who didn't have the requisite level of respect to be in a school, but that all goes back to the cycle of poverty, and if their parents didn't know, how can their parents tell them what's appropriate at school? And then if you have all these issues, not to mention the trauma that they go through having to live in a city with this level of violence, this level of drug abuse, this level of poverty that, that leads kids to be emotionally disabled, academically disabled, and, go through life not knowing what they don't know.
I mean, you've been in the teacher community for 10 years plus. What's the morale of the teachers? And I ask that question because you're hiring younger teachers. You mentioned retention of the teachers being perhaps 3 to 4 years. What's the state of just teachers in general?
it's despondent. It's despondent. The cohort I came in with, I used to always laugh with when I got together with them. We go out to have a dinner or something like that. We all get together, and I say to them, I'm the last one standing. So the cohort of teachers I came with in my first year, I was the last one left. The whole point now is to get out of the classroom, and that's unfortunate. I never wanted to be a principal because I always felt like the principal had to deal with the kids that got in the most trouble, the parents who were the most difficult to deal with, and never got a chance, at least here in Baltimore, from my experience, to really enjoy what it is to be an educator. I look at teachers now, because of the pressures put on them. You have a test that determines your salary, but when you're early on, determines your tenure because it's connected to your evaluation and your observation. And so here you are, untrained, because a lot of our teachers come through alternative programs like Teach for America, Baltimore Teacher Residency, rather, which can be very solid. And I've seen some great teachers come through that, but they have minimal training in education for a population that needs truly expert teachers from day one. And they get burned out. That's why it's 4 years. The average career is 4 years. They get burned out. It becomes unsustainable. And that's just on the paperwork side. That's just on looking at, oh my God, how am I going to teach this wide array of students? They're so diverse in terms of how they learn. They're so diverse in terms of the academic ability. They're so diverse in terms of their behavior, so diverse in terms of their learning disabilities. How am I going to teach them? Maintain a positive outlook on teaching, still keep myself in good standing with the administration, and still feel like I'm doing what I was called to do. Because most teachers don't become teachers to be bullies. They become teachers because they literally enjoy working with kids. And this is, they felt it at some point. They saw that light bulb come on. They got addicted to that, or they got addicted to the stage of a classroom and getting to talk about books. Like I got to talk about books every day. I mean, I'm a nerd. I get to talk about books and comic books and relate that to real life. Like that was my joy. That was my pleasure. But the morale now is that I'm just either you're close enough to your 25 years to hang on, or you are doing this until you can find something else better to do. And I always said I was going to do 10 years. Numbers are important to me. That 10 meant something to me. I felt like 10 years would make me an expert. And I felt like it did. But nobody stays anymore. And that all started when people started vilifying teachers. And I hate to say that, but a lot of people, when the voice came out like, oh, teachers aren't doing their jobs, immediately a lot of people thought back to their worst teacher. And I always compare that to going to a fast food restaurant, because you're going to have so many different teachers through your life. Like I can remember every teacher I had from first grade to 12th grade. I can even kindergarten, because I remember Miss Mary in kindergarten, because I had a crush on Miss Mary. But I can go all the way back. And I can say, when you go to a fast food restaurant, there's a bad McDonald's, there's a good McDonald's. Like sometimes even at the good McDonald's, you might have bad customer service. You might have something that really was just rotten about your interaction there. But you don't stop going to McDonald's because you had one bad experience there. You don't say all McDonald's should be held to this, should be fired and should be micromanaged because of this one person. You complain about that person. You talk to the manager. You see what else you can do, or you move on to another one. But when it came to teachers, it didn't go that way. It was like, well, all teachers are doing this, and it destabilized the profession. It made it so that we are now we're a transient profession. People come, they get their loans paid back, because there's a great way to get your loans paid back. If you teach for a certain number of years, student loans paid back, and then they move on. So it's, the morale is it's bottoming out. And even right now, I think multiple times in my career, we've had this thing called zero basing. It's primarily the reason I left. And we had an outside entity come in, and they were going to pretty much take over the school and do a new curriculum, micromanage everything a teacher does. They came in, they said, well, we want everybody they observed us for a year, throughout the year. They said, we want everybody to reapply for their job. And hubris might be one of my faults, but I said, there's no way in the world then I'm going to reapply for a job that I did at the highest level that I love, that nobody wants. There's no way I'm going to reapply for this. And so that's the reason I left. And it broke my heart to leave. I cried the day I left. But those are the type of things that are happening to teachers that make people say, forget it.
On that particular day, when you decided that you were going to hang it up, did you have the plan B?
You know what my plan B was? There was a teacher fair. It's called a voluntary transfer. There's a voluntary transfer teacher fair that was held in a cafeteria at a high school. I remember it vividly. It was in May. It was about 90 degrees outside. It had no air conditioning, and I wore a suit, and I sweat through my suit. It was the first time I ever had sweat stains underneath in a suit. And I walked around, and I said, if I can teach at Douglas, I can teach anywhere. You give me a book in a day, and send me to Baghdad. I bet you I have my class in order. So it was, I'm gonna go teach somewhere else. And I walked up to this school that I knew the principal, and he said, I need a science teacher. And I'm a reading specialist because I got my master's from Loyola, so I can do K through 12. I can teach anything K through 12. And I said, I never taught science before. He said, well, come check the school out. I walked into school about 2 days later, and I signed up that day. I did an interview with them, but with a panel of teachers there, which I liked also. I liked the idea that it wasn't just one person hiring you. Like, you had to talk to other teachers, get a feel for it. Because I was really interviewing them. At that point in my career, without sounding arrogant, like, I knew what I could do. But when I walked into school, it smelled like a school. It smelled like crayons and, a little bit of bathroom. But that's what a school's supposed to smell like. And it is. And when I walked in, I said, I'm going to teach here. And I stayed there 5 more years. I taught science, 7th, 8th grade science for 2 years. I taught 6th and 7th grade reading for 2 years. And I made the curriculum for that one. And then I taught English, 8th grade English for 2 years. It sounded like 6. So it was somewhere around there. But it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And, the difference in that school was they had resources because they had a principal who, at the, very early on, understood about partnerships, outside partnerships. And everything in Baltimore City is where they've given the principals more autonomy over the schools and autonomy over the budgets. So, they decide how much they're going to spend on things, and wherever they come up short, they have to go out and find that. Which, I don't know how equitable that is. And I have different feelings about that because it led to, towards the end of my time there, feeling like the kids were just product testers of certain educational materials without thought to how much learning was going on. And like I said, I've had wonderful experiences at every school I've been in, but I was uneasy about that. I do think that there are a lot of companies that want to see Baltimore City schools succeed, but I also think that they don't necessarily understand how to come in and how to make that a lasting, substantive good. And and that all goes back to real education and educational philosophy. Paradigms in education take 25 to 50 years to change. Like a true paradigm takes 50 years to change because you have to watch people grow from kindergarten through not just early life, but through midlife to see how successful they were and see how their education early on affected them. Right now, we're jumping ship Baltimore City changes every 5 years. Every 3 to 5 years rather. And the nation is changing from president to president.
We don't know what's working.
Well, we don't even know what's next. So if we're really thinking about it, there's no, the catchphrase in Baltimore or Baltimore City and around the country is, what does the data say? The data it's false data because we can't tell yet. True paradigm.
Analytics.
These are things we know. Exactly. These are things that we know. These are things that are written in books. I'm not telling you things that are new age. I'm talking about things that have been written in books forever about education. Have said that we take 50 years to show a true paradigm shift. So if we're changing as fast as we're changing, we have no idea. And it all goes, in my opinion, back to the fact that somebody somewhere along the line saw how much money could be made off education and off the backs of children and forgot about their humanity and said, let's go make this money, and who cares what happens? And they're people who are getting rich while children are falling between the cracks.
Can you tell us about 1106 and even reading the who we are? I found the name very interesting. If you could kind of share how you all got started and how you came up with the name 1106.
About a year ago, I came home and my wife said, you're tired. And I was like, I'm not tired. She said, no. She said, you're getting tired. And I had lost another student, and I don't keep count because it's why measure tragedy? Why measure misery? But it does something to you when you see like young people who are at the beginning of their lives losing their lives. And it's even worse when you see their moms and their moms cared about them. And they wanted to do everything they could. They did everything that they knew they could to help them. And I said, I am tired. And so about a year ago, the idea of 1106 came up to me. And the actual name 1106 was my first college apartment at Alabama A&M. And it was the off-campus apartment, but it was right next to campus. And all of my friends would come, and it was kind of the hub. So I can say it was my apartment, and of course it was a 3-bedroom, so it was, I shouldn't say it was mine alone, but you might as well have thought it was, because I had, my friends were the ones who slept on the sofa and would drink your soda in the refrigerator if you left it there too long. And that's where we cooked and we barbecued even though we weren't supposed to. And I remember vividly one night sitting around with about five of my closest friends, and we went around in a circle and said what we're going to do to change the world. And I said I knew it was going to be through education. And I followed the model of my mom initially as being a classroom teacher. And, she was at the end of her life, she was an assistant principal. But she was working on her PhD also. And I thought to myself, for 1106, I had to get the training. And I needed the on-the-job training. I needed the educational training. I needed the heart training. But I wanted to go from a micro level to a macro level. And I wanted to make sure that I could reach as many people as possible and show them and share my skill and my knowledge with them so that they can prepare their children for what's going to be a global world. So it was my first apartment. It's where I really thought about what am I going to contribute to this world? What's my legacy going to be? Am I going to be the son of this incredible man who came from Nigeria with a box and $5 to his name and had 5 kids who all have at least 2 degrees, and a mom who changed the lives of so many people. I get so many wonderful messages about how my mother changed people's lives, who essentially grew up with a manic depressive mother and a father who dealt with alcoholism in the 60s, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in America, and had 5 kids who all went to college, had multiple degrees, husband who she supported to go through medical school, had a successful medical practice, and was still at University of Alabama trying to get working on her thesis for her PhD when she passed the breast cancer. I said, is that going to be my legacy? Because that's a beautiful legacy. Or am I going to take it a step further? And this is me taking a step further. And 1106 is what I'm doing with that. I like to call it concierge teaching. I like working with children who have some of the same issues I have. So I told you I'm open about having ADHD. I didn't learn until I was an adult, and I know now that what my parents did was they basically treated me without ever saying this is what I was dealing with. I was involved in everything. They were strict disciplinarians. They gave me outlets, physical, artistic, emotional outlets that I needed, that I used throughout my life. They gave me structure. I learned how to build that structure. And then I learned how I learned. And that was the key. In grad school, I learned exactly how I learned. I learned that I have to be I need to be around people. I learned I need to experience things. I learned I have to talk about things, and then I learned I have to write them. And I learned when to use those different modalities, and that saved me. And so I want to teach other people that. I want to teach them how. It made me a superhero. I used to tell my kids every day, like I'm an X-Man. Like I can read anything, analyze it, and break it down and apply it to my life. Like that's, and then synthesize it to apply to someone else's life. And I said that's the highest. That's Professor Xavier. That's mind control. And so I told them, this is the power you want. And that's what I want to do with 1106. So concierge teaching is what I do because I still like the one-on-one with kids. I miss the relationships. I miss watching that light come on. Also, I work with outside entities coming into schools to teach them some of the keys to making sure that you can have a program that is followed effectively with fidelity. And, one of the things I give one hint away for free. You got to find that power teacher to buy into you. One, you have to have a good program. But two, you have to find that power teacher, that teacher that everybody looks at. It's not necessarily going to be the most popular teacher. It's a teacher that's respected, has enough of a cachet with the kids and with their colleagues to say, this works. We're going to work on this. I'll model it for you. Let's try it. Also, the thing that I'm most excited about now is, I have a son. I have a 4-year-old. I have a 4-year-old, and right now, I'm homeschooling him part-time. He's been in daycare since he was 4 months old. Just because that's how it works in Baltimore. We both have to work. My wife and I both have to work. 4 months old, he went to daycare. He goes to incredibly good daycare. The daycare is about what you would pay for a nice size sedan a year. It's unbelievable. But they gave him a great learning experience. He had a great learning experience. So I have no complaint. But it's exploratory learning. Now, the only schools that offer exploratory learning moving forward are places like the Friend School, which is going to be, the Obamas send their kids there. And I don't have Obama's money.
Right.
So
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with that school.
I don't have that. So it's just, that's not an option. So I want to make sure that he's prepared to be able to sit in any classroom and maximize his learning potential based on understanding how he learns in every situation. So with him, I focus on, I use a lot of exploratory learning. Like today we had a field trip. One of our first field trips was, we went to Whole Foods. But because it's a neighborhood Whole Foods, we got to tour the back. And we got to see what it's like in the back of the grocery store. Next week we got a farm we're going to. We set it up by talking about the things he's interested in, talking about some of the things that happen in a grocery store and how actual things take place and who does what and things like that. But I want him to be a lifelong learner, and I want him to see that you learn at all times. With teaching him at home, it's an 1106 school. I'm basically starting my school for my son. I've turned my living room into pretty much a classroom, and I tape it from a first person point of view with a camera on my head, so that I can show people who maybe aren't able, because I know it's a blessing to be able to homeschool my kids part time. I know that, that's a privilege. But I want to give parents or people who love kids, who have kids in their life who they love, an opportunity to see what it's like, what teaching a kid is like from a first person point of view. And I want to model it at the highest level. I want to show them how to use the flashcards. I'm going to show them how to make the flashcards first. I'm going to show them how to use them with their child. I'm going to show them how to run the copy of a book they have at school, so that you can really make homework meaningful instead of being something that you're just doing. And I want to show them how we can interact with our kids in a way that truly makes them want to learn for their entire life, and makes it so that I hate to say it, make sure that the teacher is not irrelevant, but can be exactly what they're supposed to be, which is the guide to their own truth. So I'm really excited about that. I got the YouTube channel. I just started that. Like I got content coming out soon. But it's the joy of my life, man, and it's rejuvenating me. And if I can't do it, that idea that I'm doing it for my son makes it even more important, because like that's me. That's only the second Okeke male in my entire line I could trace back to the 1300s through my dad, that born in America, and he didn't have a choice but to be great. Like my parents didn't give me a choice, and your parents didn't give you guys a choice. So he's gonna have to be great, and I just want to give him the tools so it's not such a drudgery. It's not such a torture, and he doesn't have to make the mistakes I made.
And so, Obasi, I'm a parent, and I have a kid, and I want to get them involved in 1106. How does that process go about? What do I expect as a parent, and what can that kid experience or expect from you being a part of your program?
Two different things now. If we're dealing one-on-one, then you get to have, if you're dealing one-on-one with me, then I'm everybody. I'm your favorite English teacher's favorite English teacher. But because I have that reading background, and everything is reading now. Like your math, if you look at a math book now, you say, what is this? This isn't math anymore. I'm talking about from first grade on. Everything is reading. Everything is literacy. I can teach you anything. So that's one, and you get the idea that it's a joyful thing. But but the real thing, the one that's going to reach out to everybody, is going to be this YouTube channel where you get to see how much fun it can be to watch your child grow. You're going to look from my perspective to watch my son develop from 4 years old. We're talking about a kid who has wonky fingers like me. I didn't learn how to tie my shoes in the right way until I was about 13. I still had those Velcro for a long time. And I remember people laughing, but I was still good. I was cold-blooded kickball, but I remember people laughing at my Velcro shoes. He had the same type of hand issues I had. You're going to watch him be able to learn and develop as a writer, and watch me guide him through it. You're going to watch him learn how to read, and you're going to watch him learn how to count. You're going to watch him learn math. You're going to watch him learn about the world. And you're going to see that it's not as hard as you think. This is how you supplement what's happening in Baltimore City schools. This is what you do. The answer is going to be from you. And in a real sense, we can make it bigger. I'm giving it away now. You're going to subscribe to my YouTube channel, but I'm giving it away right now. But eventually, this is how school is going to really happen. Because, there's a groundswell of people who are starting to homeschool more and more now. But and I have my misgivings about that. There are reasons to do it, reasons not to do it. But you will be able to supplement your child's education at home at a minimal cost. It'll take effort, but if you can work out, you can work out. If you work out physically, you can work out mentally, and once you make it part of their lives, it's going to be something that you'll see long-term results with, because that's what education is about. I think that's where we got away from. It got to the popcorn where everybody's waiting for it to pop out in the 5 minutes. That's not what education is about. If we're talking about real education, your foundation is everything, and it goes throughout your entire life. So that's what you're going to really see. And right now, honestly, that's what I'm most excited about. I still also create programs that I take to nonprofits so that they can use, usually in conjunction with like a sporting, a sport camp, where I was like, look, you already have the captive audience. Let's work on their SAT scores right now. Like, I got a game we can play with cards and pictures and vocabulary words that's going to build their vocabulary. I give you 10 cards, and you're going to end up having 75 words off these 10 cards. Once you look at their synonyms, antonyms, and just the card in general, which would not traditionally be used in everyday speech. And right off the bat, you've changed SAT scores. Because even though the test has changed, where you might not have to look at ubiquitous anymore. You're still going to have to know. You still might have to know what a mall is. You might have to know it, and we can do this. So it's the things that I want to do now are the things I want to do in the classroom, but based on time constraints or just some of the mechanisms in place, I could not do. And I was unsatisfied with that happening anymore. I was like, that couldn't happen anymore because I wouldn't want that to happen to my son.
And it's real.
It is, BG. It's real. And it's actually, in my opinion, it's the new way of learning. And I really think that that you may want to look into figuring out how to potentially patent or whatever the legal term is for what you're doing.
The only reason I haven't posted any videos yet. That's the only reason. The only reason. Like I said, it's the joy of my life. I can't believe it. You know, when you said something about morale earlier, I'm like, what's the morale of the teachers? I don't like being angry. Like, I'm an emotional person. So I believe in all emotions. I believe in the entire scope. But anger will eat at you. I feel like it eats at your soul. And there's just it's so much more. It just means so much more to love. And I was becoming angry. And I wasn't taking it out on my students. I wasn't taking it out on my family, but I was approaching. It was just there was this underlying tone of anger because of what I saw happening, and I don't want that to be part of my life. And I don't think anybody does. But once I recognized it, I said, what I have to do to change it, and this was it. Like, this was it. This teaching is, you know, I always said I never wanted my profession to have that much. To be everything that I am. I didn't want it to be like, oh, that's Obasi the teacher. Like, I love being a teacher, but I don't want to say, oh, he's a teacher. But I am. It is an essential part of my psyche and my persona. Is what it is. It is inside of me, and you know, I have to be able to do it the way I have to be able to do it. And I think deep down, it can help everybody. And if that could be my legacy, then I think I will have made my parents proud.
Before we get out of here, I got one last question.
What's up?
School choice versus public school. Where are we headed?
Woo.
And what do we need to do, I guess, to just ready our communities for change that's about to come our way?
It is the scariest thing to come along. I think it's the scariest thing to come along in my career. School choice in middle school. School choice means like you get to go to a school that's not in your zoned area. So let's say you live in a neighborhood and the neighborhood school is X. You go to X school. Now with school choice, you get to pick the school you go to, but you don't really get to pick the school you go to. There's an application process. It's been in place in Baltimore City for years. And it's especially draconian for high school. So I taught middle school for 5 years. In 7th grade, your test scores, and it fluctuates on which test they actually use. Your test scores and your grades give you a composite score that allows you to apply to certain schools. I think the range goes up to like 750 or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of the exact numbers. For the top schools in Baltimore City, you have to have anywhere from a 660 to 770. And and that even fluctuates based on the scores of the class that year. All right, so it's basically like applying to college. And if you don't have those scores, then you have to pick from a lower tier schools. If you have even lower scores, you pick from the bottom tier schools. Now, who does that hurt the most? Kids who don't have an idea about how important school is in 6th and 7th grade are done. If you do poorly in 7th grade, you don't get to go to the highest achieving schools or schools with the most resources. Because the highest achieving schools are schools with most resources. I should just say it like that. And so that changes the trajectory of your life before you even get to high school. I thought it was, I in my heart felt that it was wrong. I think about myself in 7th grade. All I cared about was PE and pizza. That's it. The round white pizza and going to PE every day and playing basketball. I could not have cared less about grades. And I still had to do well enough so I could go home and not be on punishment. So it wasn't even like I didn't do okay, but I didn't care at all. Now, what happens to somebody who does not have a parent at home or educator and a highly motivated doctor at home to tell them, hey, you better do this. You're set up for failure. And that's another way to segregate the schools again. So that school choice thing is basically making children apply to college, making children at the most turbulent stage of their lives, because everyone was crazy from 6th grade to 8th grade. Taking that point and determining how and where, determining opportunities that they'll be able to have moving forward from 9th grade on. How different were people from 7th grade? I know people in 7th grade that I went to school with who didn't do anything, who are doctors and have PhDs right now. And it warms my heart. Let me go back a little bit more. School choice, going to elementary school. It will be a brain drain. That means that the kids learn from each other. If you're not socialized with children who are high achieving, if you're only socialized with children who know nothing about, who have never seen, the dentist or the doctor's child or the pharmacist's child or the lawyer's child or the business owner's child, and they've never seen the level of care that they have to put into, that they put in education, they'll never know. Those children won't want to go to school at a school that is filled with children who do not have the same value system when it comes to education. And so schools will be in a perpetual cycle of always trying to motivate kids who do not have the resources and support at home to be successful. Now, we always hear about the outlier, and I love the outliers. Outliers are the kids that that a lot of times are the kids that made me go to school in the morning, made me get up and be at school at 7:10. We were late at 7:30. But we cannot base policy on outliers, and that's what's going to happen. So we're going to have that brain drain in neighborhoods that can't afford to lose any more talent. That's what's going to happen. Now, we're talking about for school vouchers. I have no idea, because part of the allure of private schools is that they are restrictive in who they allow to come. The private schools of some are very different from private schools up here, but I'm very curious to see how many private schools are going to honor those vouchers and the level of private schools that honor those vouchers. I'm very interested to see what the curriculum will be at the private schools, because they are private as opposed to public, they do not have to meet the same standards that a public school has to meet. I know many private schools who do not accept students with learning disabilities. I know a lot of charter schools who don't accept students with learning disabilities. I'm very interested to see how that works and to see if that silver bullet that a lot of people say, well, now they'll be socialized with children who are higher achieving. I'm very interested to see what those numbers actually look like when they come out. And I'm also very interested to see the retention of those children, because now you're going to be looking at kids going to completely different cultural environments with little to no support, because you still have parents who, might really want them to be there and are supportive in terms of them being there, but have no idea on how to support the child and support their experience in going from what will probably be a predominantly African-American school to a school that's predominantly white. And, I didn't do that until I went to law school, and then, my time at law school and my time at Loyola, and I was a grown man, and it was still a culture shock for me. And I had traveled the world with my parents, and I had seen so many different things. And I looked at myself as a worldly person, and it was still a cultural shock to me. I really wonder what mechanisms will be put in place for children to deal with that sort of thing. Because going to the private schools, and I have friends who teach at private schools. I have one of my mentors is actually at a diversity lead at a private school, and I know he cares, and I know that he would do everything he can. But to see a large influx of children who have never seen any, who come from pretty much a destitute situation, to seeing what it's like to go to a private school that looks like a college, that looks truly has like a college level facilities, is something to think about. And that's looking at a child holistically, which we know we don't really do anymore. Like kids are widgets to everybody now. It's about a number. And it's unfortunate. I don't think it's going to work. But in the process of it not working, how many kids lose out? This is the Nigerian proverb, when the elephants battle, the grass gets trampled. And, while elephants are fighting, we're watching kids on the grass, and they're getting stamped out. And they're not going anywhere. these are the people that are going to have to take care of us when we get older, and we're leaving them skillless.
That's why the work that you're doing with 1106 is important, and basically creating a buffer, a place for those that could be lost by the wayside by what these corporations and what these politicians are trying to do. Is coming back to the community and, setting a model for other individuals who have that desire to want to get the kids learning in a way that they can sustain themselves. So I'm just as excited about it as you are, I believe.
This to me is what the platform was created for and what it's all about. Allowing not only, I get enthused just from listening to the conversation and hearing his passion. So to me, this is what it's all about.
We appreciate you for coming, taking that time out of your busy schedule, Obasi, to talk to us. You got any words you want to leave the people with? And while you do that, also give them your contact information, any website links, anything, so that people can connect with you.
First, man, I have to say, I can't tell you, brothers, how much I appreciate it. There is a new movement going on, and you all created a platform that is invaluable to so many people, man. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. It's a true blessing. Brian, like I said, from kindergarten on, man, I can't tell you, I knew you were gonna do great things. He won't tell you how smart he was, but I just throw it in there. I remember you skipped first grade, so I just throw that in there. Just throw it in there. But I appreciate you, brother, so much. But anybody wants to contact me, first check out my website, www.1106, that's ELEVENOHSIX.com. If you check me out on Twitter, 1106 LLC, and on Instagram at 1106. And I really appreciate it, man. Get in contact with me. This is happening, and I'm gonna change education. Like I feel it in my heart. Just like you guys are changing this radio. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what's gonna happen. I can't wait to watch you guys grow. And let's do it, man. Thanks again.
We're gonna get you back on here too. And before you sign off, man, it's like, you come in as kids and you don't never know what the next 20 plus years is gonna be like. But to have this opportunity to bring one of my brothers on, and him sharing his expertise and his passion with the world, it really does my heart well. And also, man, I have to tell you this all the time. Your mom, so instrumental in all of our lives that came through Selma, through that school system. A lot of the stuff that we got from that classroom, we still ride on each and every day. And when you talk about it, just send chills through my spine. Just remember being in that classroom and how much love that she gave us. And she taught us how to work, man. She taught us how to work, and she prepared us for this world. So a lot of what we do here, a lot of what you see on this podcast from me, is truly representative of Miss Gio. So we always have to big up her and her contributions to our life, man. So, but once again, man, we appreciate you for joining us on this podcast. And like I said, we're gonna do this again.
Definitely. Anytime, brother. I love to talk about education. Let me know.
All right, man.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Take care, brother.
Take care. Be Jeezy.
Yes, sir.
Another one in the books, man. Like I was saying earlier, that's the purpose of this podcast. And when you can link up with someone that has found a passion, that speaks passionately about what it is that they've jump started and what they're doing, and then you can allow them to be on this platform to share their story, to capture it digitally, and be able to even use it to continuously promote their brand. At the end of the day, this is what gives me joy, and this is why we started this whole New South Movement Network.
Yeah, we're making history with it, and a lot of people with this whole podcast game, man, I sit back and think about it and look at, it's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of content putting out, in the atmosphere. And sometimes we look at the stats and all that, and we try to figure out, well, how does this podcast get these numbers, and their content might not measure up. But just as you said, this is what it's about, man. So much information being passed along from people that come from our space. And we just really put this out there to help somebody, to empower people. And that's very empowering. We're talking about the education and how important it is. But then when you look at budgets being cut, and money and resources being taken away from school and being put into wars and oil and defense and all of this stuff, is like, we know it's important, but the powers that be don't seem to value it as much. And so to have someone from the inside kind of give us an idea of ways that we can combat this system that seems to be playing against us, and then to have it in such a way that people can really go in and take advantage of it. And for us to have this podcast platform to put it on highlight, I feel good about what we're doing, and we're going to keep on pushing it, regardless of if we get all of the high fives and the congratulations that we probably deserve. If we don't get it, we still making a difference, and that's all that matters to me.
Absolutely, but for the record, I wasn't laughing at the idea of you getting of you skipping a grade. I was more or less reminiscing on the stories of and the background as to you skipping the grade. So that I just wanted to make that clear for the audience so they wouldn't think I was being disrespectful.
Disrespectful. It's all good. We family right here. We family.
Shout out to Mick Gosa. She don't play. Let's get out of here, man.
I'm BG, the 27 kid on Instagram, BG_DA27KID. Check for me.
Your boy Tight at Tight_Tight_. We all members of the New South Movement Podcast Network. How can the people reach us, BG?
Hit us up, www.newsouthnet.com. Also on iTunes and SoundCloud. Search New South, one word, and you will find us as well as all of the other members of the New South Movement Podcast Network.
And we out of here. Peace.
Finish the world on fire. 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 Finish the world on fire.